Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the Bill Gates coronavirus conspiracy theory. This is a fast-growing conspiracy theory. It has much faster growth than other popular conspiracy theories like the flat earth movement, the idea that the moon landing was faked, or the idea that the world is dominated by alien lizard people. Just a reminder here that I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. Bill Gates was born in 1955. He's the co-founder of Microsoft, and at the time of making this video, he's the second wealthiest individual in the world. In 2008, we see he starts dedicating a lot of time and resources to philanthropy. He's donated billions of dollars to eradicate diseases and to improve health around the world. So first I'll look at this conspiracy theory that involves, again, coronavirus and Bill Gates. I'll talk about how it was formed. I'll analyze the conspiracy theory, so kind of discuss whether it's logical or illogical, and then look at the mental health and personality factors that led to this conspiracy theory. So this conspiracy theory is relatively straightforward. It makes a few different assertions. It says that Gates wants to depopulate the planet. It says he funds research through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to create vaccines for that purpose. This funding also helped to create or distribute the coronavirus. It argues that Gates will fund the development of a vaccine that will contain a microchip. So the mission here of Gates under this conspiracy theory is that he wants to commit homicide or genocide. He wants to sell vaccines, track people, and control people. So that's really what we see here in this conspiracy theory. So Bill Gates is like an evil mastermind, and it's all around this area of the coronavirus and his work with vaccines. So how is this conspiracy theory formed? How were these conclusions reached? Well, there are many factors, so I'll cover these factors, and as I mentioned, I'll go through and offer how they are refuted in the next section. We see that Bill Gates is exceedingly wealthy. He's also one of the largest donors to the World Health Organization. We see this argument that he is psychopathic and an evil genius, and this is really strictly based on his success in his business. We see this argument that he funded the Pirbright Institute and that they have a patent on a coronavirus, so this seems to look suspicious. We see this discussion of Event 201. This event was hosted in 2019 by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. It was really a pandemic tabletop exercise, and several partners were involved, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We also see this suspicion around ID2020. This is a public-private coalition. It's nonprofit. The members include representatives from Microsoft as well as other companies. The idea here is that this organization supports Bill in his effort to make vaccination mandatory and his effort to install these microchips, to implant these microchips in millions of people. Sometimes instead of microchips, we see a reference to quantum dot tattoos. The next item is that Gates committed $100 million to bolster the COVID-19 response. So this is kind of, I guess, just used to illustrate that he has a lot of money in this situation in general. We see this post he made on Reddit. In response to a question, he said that eventually we will have some digital certificates to show who has recovered or who has been tested recently. When the vaccine is available, we could also see who has received it. So he made a statement like that on that Reddit, and that's kind of been used as part of this conspiracy theory. We see research that has been funded by the Gates Foundation has become part of this conspiracy theory. So research was proposed that would keep a record of vaccination on a person's skin. So this really goes back to that quantum dot tattoo I talked about before. This would use an invisible dye that could last up to 5 years, and it could be read with a specially adapted smartphone. In 2015, we see Gates warned of a pandemic in a TED Talk. He said that the pandemic would take place in the next decade, and it would kill over 30 million people in 6 months, similar to what happened in 1918 with the Spanish flu that killed over 50 million people. In that same talk, he argued that the world needs to prepare for pandemics in the same way they would prepare for war. Then the last part of this conspiracy theory is his claim of depopulation efforts. So this idea that he said that vaccines could be used to reduce the birth rate. So that kind of sums up the logic, if one wants to call it that was used to create this conspiracy theory. So is this conspiracy theory logical? Well, the short answer is no, right? But I'll go through item by item and explain why. So kind of looking at that original list, we start off with the idea that he's wealthy. Well, a lot of people are wealthy. Actually, that gives him less of a motive to be an evil mastermind that wants to dominate the world. He already has a lot of power and wealth. We see he's one of the largest donors to the World Health Organization. That's consistent with his mission, right? He tries to help spread vaccines to a number of different countries and to improve people's health. This kind of makes sense. How about this idea that he's psychopathic or an evil genius because he was successful in business? Well, other than excitement seeking when he was young, we see he was arrested for traffic violations. There's really no evidence that he's psychopathic. I don't see really any characteristics of psychopathy when looking at Bill Gates' behavior. How about this connection to Pirbright Institute? Now, they do study coronaviruses, and they do have a patent on one, and they have received money from the Gates Foundation. However, this biological research organization holds a patent for a coronavirus that primarily affects chickens. So I guess unless chickens are getting together and saying there's a big conspiracy, there's really not much to see here. This institute does not hold a patent on any part of the novel coronavirus that is causing the COVID-19 pandemic. This makes me wonder, though, if chickens did have conspiracy theories, would they still have alien reptile people, or would it be something that's more threatening to them specifically? Like, would it be alien fox people? Because chickens have, I would think, a fear of foxes at some level. Foxes are known to kill chickens. So it's just a thought. I really haven't asked too many chickens about conspiracy theories, but that's interesting. They have a better argument to make based on at least this one piece of evidence. The next item is this Event 201. This was a simulation about a coronavirus. It was a coronavirus more like SARS. And it really makes sense considering the health security focus of the organization that conducted it. I understand this is a little suspect. It did seem coincidental that it happened not long before the novel coronavirus pandemic. But even if it was not a coincidence, and I think it was, the best argument would be that they somehow knew about the threat, or they knew that a coronavirus could get out of control. Well, a lot of people knew about that before the coronavirus pandemic occurred. Not enough people took it seriously, but a lot of people knew of that threat. Then we move to ID 2020. There's really no evidence that this organization is involved in any conspiracy. I think this one was just selected because of the tie to Bill Gates. Now, how about the idea that Gates committed $100 million to bolster the COVID response? Well, this is consistent with his mission. This actually looks pretty ordinary considering what he does. I would be more surprised if he did not donate money to help bolster the COVID-19 response. Then there's this Reddit post with Gates talking about digital certificates. Well, digital certificates are virtual, not physical, and they don't involve microchips at any level. There's no tracking capabilities in a digital certificate. So I think a lot of people just misunderstood what a digital certificate actually was. Now, what about that research around the record of vaccination being on somebody's skin? Well, again, we see no tracking involved here. This is line of sight, and it requires that smartphone, like I mentioned. That smartphone would have to be within 1 foot of the person's skin. Yes, it doesn't seem necessarily like a good idea given the concerns with privacy, but is really still far from a conspiracy theory. Now, in terms of that TED Talk in 2015, Gates warned of a pandemic. Well, Gates and just about everyone else who studied history knew of the risk of a pandemic. This did not represent special knowledge. If he was part of a conspiracy, why would he give the talk, right? This doesn't seem to make sense, given what the conspiracy theory now says. Also, a number of conspiracy theorists predicted there would be a pandemic. So they're not really holding themselves to the same standard to which they hold Bill Gates. Then the last item that was talked about in the conspiracy theory was this claim of depopulation efforts. So the idea behind this was that vaccines could be used to reduce the birth rate. So Bill Gates came to the conclusion that birth control was not the best approach to slow population growth. The best approach, rather, was to reduce mortality. He indicated this was counterintuitive, right? It defies common sense, but it's his belief that this is what occurs. So if society can decrease the mortality rate, then population growth would stabilize. it's not really part of an effort to eliminate people. It's really talking about helping people live longer to help control the population. Now, it's controversial whenever somebody talks about controlling population growth, but again, this is a far distance from what the conspiracy theory alleges. So is there other evidence that would refute this conspiracy theory other than what I've talked about? Well, there is. We see Gates' personality. We see he fears superintelligence, like he's worried about AI, like smart computers that could build robots and other destructive elements. We see he's stockpiled supplies, so like he's kept additional food and water, worried about a pandemic or other crisis in the world. So it would seem that he really shares the same fear as many people, right? If he was really a psychopath and an evil genius, he wouldn't be concerned about all that. Also, I find it interesting that people think that he's involved in this conspiracy theory because this would really be playing the long game. So in 2008 is when he started giving a lot of money to charity. So is this his master plan, to give billions of dollars to eradicate disease? I think he's given $28 billion to charity. He's paid $6 billion in taxes. He's going to give away eventually 99.9% of his wealth. When does he capitalize on this conspiracy theory? So again, this is really the long game. At the time of making this video, Bill Gates is 64. When was he planning on enjoying his time as an evil mastermind in charge of the world? Like, I don't understand why he'd be taking so long to get to his plan. It just seems like a very roundabout way to get somewhere that's relatively straightforward, at least as it's outlined in the conspiracy theory. Also, he doesn't really have any motive. He's already wealthy. He's already powerful. In 2011, he was ranked the 4th most powerful person in the world. Does he want to get to number 3, 2, or 1? Is that really the mission? Like he wants to move up a couple spots? Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense given the type of power he currently has. So if this conspiracy theory is not true, and I think it's quite likely that it is not true, why is it here? What are the mental health and personality characteristics that play a role in developing these types of beliefs? Well, I think that at the top of the list would be fear, uncertainty, and stress. The coronavirus is really the fuel on a fire that has always been burning. The anti-vaccination movement was already one of the most common conspiracy theories before the pandemic. And Gates is an obvious example of what conspiracy theorists already fear. He has money, power, status, and interest in computers, and he's active in spreading vaccines. This coronavirus pandemic exposed a massive mental health pandemic. Really, a lot of the mental health professionals that are seeing a number of people coming in with these conspiracy theories are just in shock and awe. They can't believe there were this many people who believed in these types of conspiracy theories. Now, just to be clear, somebody can believe in this conspiracy theory and not have a mental disorder, but some people who believe in this conspiracy theory appear to have symptoms of mental disorders. And unfortunately, if somebody does have delusions, if the conspiracy theory rises to that level, they are typically resistant to counseling. There's a high level of distrust. So mental health professionals can't always do a lot about helping people in that situation. I think when there's an absence of acceptable answers, people tend to create answers. So if somebody doesn't like the narrative, they create a new one. Another factor here is what's referred to as an idea of reference. Now, this isn't always related to psychosis. It's just a symptom we see with certain pathology. This is when somebody believes circumstances that are unrelated to them are related to them. So if somebody's listening to the radio and a person on the radio mentions a specific number and that number matches something in that person's life, they might say, oh, that's a message from me, right? That DJ or whoever was trying to communicate something to me through the radio. Similar to this is the idea of believing that there are no coincidences. Everything is on purpose. So a belief that all occurrences are meaningful. We also see that conspiracy theorists tend to predict every possible outcome. And then when one outcome occurs, they say they knew it all along. So an example of this, say you have a computer program that generates a random number between 1 and 10,000. And we see here that conspiracy theorists or anybody predict all 10,000 possibilities, right? So 1 through 10,000. Every single number is covered. So now the machine, the computer, generates the number 10. So somebody might say, well, what are the chances that that machine would produce the number 10? Well, the odds are 1 in 10,000, the same odds for any number in that population. Now, if somebody anywhere predicted that number 10 would be generated, a person could say, well, there you go. That proves something's going on here. That could not have been random. Somebody predicted the number 10, and that's the number that came up. But what they forget about is all of the other incorrect predictions, the 9,999 predictions that were inaccurate. Again, those are just gone. People focus on that one accurate prediction. And of course, one of those predictions was bound to be correct, right? That should not be surprising, that when all the possibilities are covered, whatever happens would have been predicted. Conspiracy theorists are quite vocal, too. I think this is one of the reasons this conspiracy theory stands out. So people who do not believe in this theory aren't going to say that. They're not going to make a lot of posts on social media or videos or just really tell anybody. But people who believe in it, again, tend to be more vocal. They also tend to be anti-science, and they tend to fall under what's referred to as the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is when somebody without expertise believes they have expert-level knowledge, even though there's no evidence to support that. Conspiracy theories are difficult to extinguish, again, because all new information supports the conspiracy theory. It's really a logic error. So somebody is kind of sitting there, they're seeing different information come by, and they just pick out the information that supports the theory. So what's the bottom line with conspiracy theories like these? Well, misinformation is more infectious than coronavirus. And in the end, it may turn out to be more deadly. I know whenever I talk about topics like conspiracy theories, there will be a variety of opinions. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.